automatically turned off, but to encourage interaction with the presenters and with each others, we want you to actively use the Q&A to ask presenters questions. And the wonderful conference organizers, Melissa Smith and Valerie Smith, will be providing the questions to the presenters. And we most definitely want you to give us your feedback regarding this year's conference so we know how to best meet your needs next year. The clinical services that are provided through our division are largely done in person at our new clinic at the East River Road site. But as many of you know, over the past 7 months, we've been seeing you virtually. And this really has been very helpful in improving access and allowing us to continue with the important work that we do related to assessment and treatment of children and youth with developmental disabilities, especially autism, through the period of COVID. In addition to our medical programs, we have a number of behavioral programs that are also being done virtually as well as on site. And within the division, there's a very large community-based set of activities that are focused through the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities that provide technical assistance and community outreach, as well as school-related consultation. And the other technical assistance and professional development activities through the Rochester Regional Center for ASD are also within the division and sponsored by New York State. The Division of Developmental and Behavioral Pediatrics and the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities is are members of multiple national networks that are involved with setting the standard of care, both medically and for intervention, as well as assessment for children and youth with developmental disorders. A big focus of our division has been addressing disparities in diagnosis as well as intervention for underserved population with community collaboration. And this conference is really the product of collaboration between members of our division, especially Melissa and Valerie, who I want to thank again, and our community partners to meet the needs of the community in terms of education and moving forward together. This is our 8th annual conference. The first one had its origins when I was sitting at a national meeting with one of our family advisory committee members who turned over and said to me, "How come you're not telling us what's going on in research and what's going on at the University of Rochester?" And my eyes got wide and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, we have to do this." And we have been doing this for the past 8 years, and this is the 4th year that we've been doing it with the support of the Skirball family. To continue the interactive nature of the conference, even though we're not sitting all in the same room, there will be an opportunity to speak with family navigators who are family members who work with us here in the clinic and to work with you to identify services and collaborations for you in the community and to help you identify resources. We also want this to be an opportunity for you to find out about the research that's being done at the University of Rochester to help address the questions that you brought to us. What are the things that you need answered so you have the right evidence to make decisions about your own child's care? What I'd like to do in closing my introductory remarks and my thanks to the Skirball family is to remember a giant among men, Mr. Mort Skirball. I only had the opportunity to have his acquaintance for the past few years, but he radiated kindness and integrity and was really an incredibly insightful judge of both human nature and of business. We valued his advice as he and his wife, Bunny Skirball, turned their attention to autism and what the needs of our community are and the needs of families. And I really think that the commitment and the generosity of the Skirball family really shows in this year's conference and the information that we're able to bring to the Skirball's adopted hometown of Rochester. Next, his granddaughter, Ryan Axelrod, will be sharing some additional thoughts from the Skirball family And I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for making this possible for you as we continue our journey together to provide care for all children and families affected by autism.
Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Axelrod, and I'm the granddaughter of Bunny and Mort Skirball. This conference is so important to me because I am currently a special education teacher. This conference was also so important to my grandfather, and I know that he would be so happy to see that although we can't all be together in person today, that we are still able to have this conference over Zoom. My grandfather was always so proud of my work in the special education field, and we loved being able to share new things that we have learned in the conferences with each other. The information and resources provided to families, educators, and other professionals in the field are so valuable and can really make a positive impact on the way that we can best support children with autism. I hope you all enjoy this year's conference and leave with new information. Thank you so much for being here and supporting the Skirball Family Autism Conference.
Thank you, Dr. Hyman, for your warm welcome and for Melissa sharing that video for Brian. I now have the honor of introducing the 2020 Skirball Conference keynote speaker, Morénike Giwa Onaiwu. Morénike is a global self-advocate, educator, and autistic woman of color in a neurodiverse, serodifferent family, a prolific writer, public speaker, and social scientist and activist. Their work focuses on narrative policy, meaningful community involvement, human rights, justice, and inclusion. Morénike, it is an honor to have you with us. The floor is yours. I will stop share.
Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen as well. And okay, great. So let me go here. Thank you for allowing me this time. I'm really happy to be with all of you. I'm going to pull up the first slide. And so the presentation is entitled Neither Created Nor Destroyed. Yikes. Sorry, y'all. That wasn't supposed to happen. Neither Created Nor Destroyed, and it's for the Skirball Conference. I just got a few things up here on the screen. I have I am a visiting scholar at Rice University, so I have their logo here, as well as that of Rochester, and then the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, where I am the Innovation and Digital Communication Coordinator. So before we go any further, I wanted to just kind of point out a few things for you all. If you, and I apologize, let me minimize this because since it's showing my screen, you all probably can't see a whole lot with that in the way. So this is the hashtag that is being used for the event. It is Skirball 2020. And so if you are on social media over these next few days and you want to share information with the greater community about what you're learning, what's going on, questions that you have, ways to get involved with the Skirball Center, then we encourage you to just use hashtag Skirball20. You have a few additional things that you can do. You can, if you'd like to tag the Strong Center for Developmental Disabilities, I have put their social media tag on here for Twitter, Facebook, etc. It's at SCDDNY. I also have the conference website. I know the majority of you probably use that for registration, but if there are any other things that you need to find out or look at, it is a resource for you. And then finally, I'm going to move this. There's going to be a lot of moving around, I think. Just going to move this for a moment. This is my hashtag. If you'd like to include me in anything that you're sharing during my keynote, it's at Morénike Go, spelled like more Nike and then go. Feel free to also tag yourself, the organization that you're with, your personal information. We want to make sure that we're sharing with one another in this new environment. So I like to start out all of my presentations with what I call my 5 C's of accessibility. Those are very important to me because we want to, an autism conference, it's important that we're all comfortable. So the very first C that I have is for comfort. I would like to encourage everyone to try to be comfortable. So if it means that you need to stim, I've got some stimming devices on my wrists, a few here in my lap. It just kind of helps me to regulate. If you need to eat or do whatever it is that you need to do while you're here from 4 to 6, please do so. And the second C is for connect and communicate. So I want you to look things up, use the chat feature if you need to ask questions. Again, put things on social media, use the hashtags, be social, connect with others so that we can learn together. Just because this is a virtual conference doesn't mean that we have to lose that interpersonal aspect of things. My third C is for consideration. So I just want all of us to be considerate of the fact that we are all different. We have different experiences, different backgrounds, different communication styles, different access needs, different sensory needs. So if a person is typing and they're a bit delayed, or if they're an augmentative adaptive communication user or AAC user and there's a bit of a delay or what have you, I just ask that we all be respectful and make sure that we, interact like the community that we're going to be over these next few days. My last 2 C's are for challenge and for commit. I'd like to challenge you to listen and learn. You might hear some things that you're familiar with. I hope that those things will be reinforcement for you. You might hear some things that you're unfamiliar with or you maybe don't agree with. I just ask again that you listen, take it in, be open-minded. And I commit you to continuing to grow and change. This conference, it exists largely in part because of the Skirball family, whom I have not had the pleasure of meeting, unfortunately, but Mort and Bunny, it's important to them. It was always important to them to be involved in a number of causes in the community, and this was one of them. So they, were always about learning more, helping out, growing and changing and developing new skills. And we want to do the same. So whatever your role is, if you are an educator, if you are a parent, if you are a researcher, a clinician, if you are like myself, an autistic individual, I use identity first language, and I'll talk about that later, or a person with autism, or if you are a parent, as I also am, or just a supporter, an ally, you're important. There is something that you can do that the rest of us cannot, to try to improve acceptance in this community, of our community in this society. So quickly, our keynote, this will either be a treat or a trick, I don't know, because I have never given this keynote before. It's one I developed and have created, strictly for this conference. It's my very first time ever giving it. I created the material, but you all are my guinea pigs, I guess. So we're going to do that together, but it is called Neither Created Nor Destroyed. And I won't read the entire summary here, but I will just paraphrase it. It's talking about energy. So energy is similar to autism in that it's quote unquote unseen. There are aspects of it that you can recognize or that you can see, but it is not in itself visible per se, but it is a component for all forms of life. And we see it in lots of different ways. Now, energy exists in many forms, and it can be amazing. It can be crucial for growth, for sustenance, for all types of things. But when misused or mistreated or misunderstood, energy can create a lot of havoc, chaos, and damage. And that is the same thing with autism. Autism is a way of being. It's not a curse, or it's just simply a different neurology, and it has its strengths and it has its weaknesses. And just like energy, cultivated properly and understood, it can, enlighten and grow. And the opposite can happen if it is, if we are marginalized and harmed. So we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to try my best to be interactive with you all, which might be a little difficult because of the virtual setting, but I like to feel like we're talking together, holding a conversation, and I'm not just talking to myself. So in addition to encouraging you to put things in the chat feature, about halfway through, we'll probably stop and have some questions and dialogue. And then again at the end, I'm also going to be showing you all some videos and sharing some personal experience related to this topic so that we can learn how to maximize the energy of the autistic community. So quickly, I mentioned my name is Morénike Giwa Onaiwu, and one of my roles is with the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, AWN for short, formerly called the Autism Women's Network, and it was created because initially when there started to be more and more autism, there wasn't a whole lot that was being shared about women and girls, and then later other people maybe who have other gender identities, such as non-binary individuals. There was a lot of talk about little boys, and there are definitely little boys with autism, but there's also adults like me, there's also adolescents, there's also a wide variety of types of people on the spectrum, and children grow up. So we just want to encourage everyone to support us throughout the entire lifespan, to learn and care about us throughout the entire lifespan, and not just that narrow window that we're a small child. So I put this up here because when I learned about the passing of Mort Skirball, again, I have never met him nor his wife, Bunny. I was really pleased to hear that his granddaughter is a special education teacher, because my master's degree is in special education. And I've worked in the nonprofit and education sector for a long time. And so one interesting thing that I learned, so I looked up a lot of things about the Skirball family, how they reside partially in Rochester, partially in Florida. They're involved in so many causes. Also very, were very engaged in the community, their synagogue. Apparently they dressed up a lot. I was looking at Bunny and Mort, and I was like, if this is how I look when I'm, a grandparent, this is gonna be awesome. Like, they just looked like they were loving life. And I read about Bunny, about how she had a major injury as a young adult and had to learn a whole lot of skills, again, relearn them and learn how to navigate the world as a disabled woman. And despite that, she, embraced who she was, raised her family, and wanted to continue to learn and help and grow, help others to grow, whether it was mental health, whether it was, urban communities, whether it was autism. And so I just wanted to take a moment. I don't know this family, but because of them, I'm here. I just wanted to take a quick moment of silence, of respect and mourning for Mort Skirball, if you'll join me, please. Thank you. And so we lost, and he's no longer in this world, in this capacity. Again, energy is neither created nor destroyed, so his legacy lives on. But I wanted to pose the idea of a man who lived his life, who was loved, cared about, a vibrant, funny, individual who made a difference. And then there are those of us who are still here, like myself, and yet people mourn us. People find out about the diagnosis of their child or themselves, and they are devastated. I once was in a parent group, and it was my very first autism parent support group I attended. And people were talking about what it was like when they first learned of their child's diagnosis. And one mother stood up and said to her, it was just like when the Twin Towers were hit by terrorists, on September 11th. And everyone started nodding, and I felt my eyes, and it's not that I didn't empathize with her, but I felt tears that knowing that you have a child that's like me and that's like my child made you feel as if you were under attack. Your world was destroyed. You were unsafe. It was a fate worse than death. And it was so horrifying and saddening for me to be in a place that was supposed to be a place of support, and to learn that this is how people view us. And it's not necessarily the parents' fault. People are reeling and trying to learn what's going on in society, plays a huge role in the stigma that exists. But before I go any further, because of that, we should be mourning for those whom we've lost. We should not be mourning for those who are still with us. And because of that, I'd like to read a statement. Many of you might have heard it before, by Jim Sinclair, and it's called "Don't Mourn for Us." Don't mourn for us. Parents often report that learning their child is autistic was the most traumatic thing that has ever happened to them. Autistic people see autism as a great tragedy, and parents experience continuing disappointment and grief at all stages of the child's and family's life cycle. But this grief does not come from the child's autism in and of itself. It is grief loss of the normal child the parents had hoped to and expected to have. Parent attitudes and expectations, and discrepancies between what parents expect of children at a particular age, and their own child's actual development causes more stress in English than the practical complexities of life with an autistic person. Some amount of grief is natural as parents adjust to the fact that an event and a relationship that they've been looking forward to isn't going to materialize. But this grief over a fantasized normal child needs to be separated from the parent's perception of the child that they do have, the autistic child who needs support of adult caretakers and who can form very meaningful relationships with those caretakers if given the opportunity. Continuing focus on the child's autism as a source of grief is damaging not only for the parents, but also for the child, and precludes the development of and an authentic relationship between them. For their own sake and for the sake of their children, I urge parents to make radical changes in their perceptions of what autism means. I invite you to look at our autism and look at your grief from our perspective. Autism is not an appendage. Autism isn't something a person has or a shell that we are trapped inside. There is no normal child behind the autism. Autism is a way of being. It is pervasive. It colors every experience, sensation, perception, thought, emotion, encounter, every aspect of our experience. It is not possible to separate the autism from the person. If you did, you would not have the person that you started with. This is important. Please take a moment to consider. Autism is a way of being. It is not possible to separate the person from the autism. Therefore, when parents say, I wish my child did not have autism, what we're hearing is, I wish the autistic child I have did not exist. And I wish I had a different non-autistic child instead. Think about that. This is what we hear when you mourn over our existence. This is what we hear when you pray for a cure. This is what we know when you tell us that your fondest hopes and dreams for us are that one day we will cease to be, and strangers you can love who are neurotypical will move in behind our faces. Autism is not an impenetrable wall. You try to relate to your autistic child and the child doesn't respond. He doesn't see you. You can't reach her. There's no getting through. Deal with, right? Only thing is, it isn't true. Look at it again. You are trying to relate as parent to child use own understanding of normal children, your feelings, your experiences, your intuitions. The child doesn't respond that way because the child cannot recognize being part of that system. That does not mean that your child is incapable of relating at all. It only means that you're assuming that you share a shared system and a shared understanding of signals and meanings. The child, in fact, does not share your system. It's as if you tried to have an intimate conversation with someone who speaks a different language. Of course, the person won't comprehend what you're talking about and respond the way you expect. It might be confusing and unpleasant. It takes more work to communicate with someone whose native language is not the same as yours. And autism goes deeper than any language or culture. Autistic people are foreigners in any society. You're going to have to give up your assumptions of shared meanings. You're going to have to learn to back up to levels more basic, translate, check, and make sure you're being understood. Give up the certainty that comes from being in your own familiarity and let your child teach you their language and guide you a little bit of the way. The outcome, if you say, may not be the normal parent-child relationship. Your child may learn to talk classes, go to college, live independently, or they may not. They may be in a self-contained classroom, sheltered activity, may need lifelong care. The ways we all relate are different. Push for your expectations, and you'll find frustration, disappointment, resentment, rage, and hatred. Approach respectfully, without preconceptions, but still with hope. And have openness to what your child can do and learn what you could have never imagined. It takes more work relating to us, but we spend our entire lives relating to you. Each of us has to learn how to talk to you, manage how to function in your society, how to reach out and make a connection with you. And we are operating in alien territory, making contact with alien beings. We spend our entire lives doing this, and then you tell us that we can't relate. Autism is not death. You may expect a child who will be like you, share your world, and relate to you. This may not be the child that you have, but it's still possible to form the kind of bond parents had been looking to. Many grieving parents do when the non-occurrence of the expected, grieve over the non-occurrence of the expected relationship of your child. That grief needs to be worked through, but it has nothing to do with autism. What it comes down to is this: you expected something that was tremendously important to you. You looked forward to it with great joy and excitement. Maybe for a while you thought you actually had it, but you don't, and it isn't going to happen. No matter how many other normal children you have, nothing will change the fact that this child, the child you wanted and hoped for and planned for and dreamed for, didn't arrive. This isn't about autism. This is about shattered expectations. The best place to address that is not in autism, but bereavement groups or counseling. This is of critical importance so that you can love and understand the surviving child that you have. You didn't lose a child to autism. You lost a child because the neurotypical child you were waiting for never came into existence. That isn't the fault of the autistic child who does exist, and that should not be our burden. We need and deserve families who can see us and value us for ourselves, not for a vision that is obscured by ghosts of children who never lived. Grieve if you must for your own lost dreams, but don't mourn for us. We're alive, real, and waiting for you. Please don't mourn what never was. We need you. We need your help and understanding. Your world is not very open to us, and we are not going to make it without your strong support. Yes, there's tragedy that comes with autism, not because of what we are, but because of the things that can happen to us. Be sad about that. Get mad about it. Do something. But the saddest part, the tragedy, is that your world has no place for us to be. How can there be a place for us when people are still grieving, bringing us into the world in the first place? Take a look at your child sometime. Tell yourself, this is not the child I expected and planned for. This is not the child I went through all those months of pregnancy for, went through all those hours of labor with. This is not the child I made plans to have experiences with. That child never came. This is not that child. Do whatever grieving you must do. Do it away from your child, please. And start learning to let go. And once you've let go, come back. Look at that child and say, this isn't the child I expected and planned for. This is an alien child landed in my life by accident. I don't know who this child is or what to do, but you know what? This child's stranded in an alien world and it needs someone to care for it, teach it, interpret it, advocate for it, and love it. This child is in my life and my family. That job is mine if I want it. Parents, do you want it? Because if that prospect excites you, join us, those of us who are on the spectrum, in strength and determination and improving our world in hope and joy, because the adventure of a lifetime is ahead of you. By Jen Sinclair. So we're going to move on a bit. And so I just want, again, we're virtual. So some of you might be like this gentleman on the left and you're pantsless right now, right? We're telecommuting, we're doing things. Some of you might be like this person on the right who's got a kid in the lap, maybe a dog barking in the background. That's fine. We're all here together. I'm just glad that you're here. We're going to be real. We're going to enjoy ourselves. We're going to learn together. We're going to grow. So I want to talk about the framework or philosophy that will be the theme throughout my entire, and one of those is that of neurodiversity. And there are a number of different definitions of neurodiversity, but essentially the one that I like is used by Dr. Nick Walker and a lot of other people, that basically it's the range of diversity that exists naturally in the human spectrum. We all are different, just like we are different ages, we're different races, we're different, lots of things, blood types. We are also different. There's all types of neurology, and it's a broad range, almost like a rainbow. And so even a person who's neurotypical is still different from the person next to him or her or them, even if that person's neurotypical as well. Autistic people may only be 1% to 2% of the population, but there's all types of difference, and we need all types of minds. Another aspect that, kind of really guide me is intersectionality. And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about why I'm calling myself an autistic person as well as a person with autism, although they are both acceptable. And I guess to make this make sense, I'll talk about the fact that I'm not going to say my age. I know I don't look a day over 19, just kidding. I'm not going to say my age, but I'm an exennial. I'm an 80s baby. And I was born here in the United States to immigrant parents, and I was born in the Midwest, and we moved around a bit, and I, finished high school in Texas, and then I've lived in various parts of the United States and have returned as an adult to Texas. But on my birth certificate, it has my name, Morénike, and then all my long middle names that are, traditional names for my culture. And it has, you know, it has sex. They weren't using gender at the time. It has my sex as female, was assigned female at birth, and it has my race as Negro. And that's what's on my birth certificate to this day. And then if you school records and my hospital records as I grew up, again, 80s baby, 80s, 90s, then my records say Black on them. That was now, it was no longer okay to call people Negro, it was offensive, so you went to Black. And which had previously been offensive, but now was not. And then my high school transcripts have Afro-American, which again, being autistic, I wasn't diagnosed until adulthood, but remember when I read that for the first time, I was like, Afro? You know, like Afro? Like I didn't get the African appearance. I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess I could grow an Afro, but why is it weird? I didn't understand why I wasn't Black anymore. I was Afro-American. And then from then on, and to this day, I'm African-American, right? I am also African, because my family, I have family from West Africa, so I also have, you know, the ethnic groups, the tribal groups that are part of me. But all of these are part of, these are the different names that have been used. And I know a lot of people say person with autism, and if that's something that person feels comfortable identifying with, I respect that. And I will not call somebody who considers themselves a person with autism an autistic person. I think everyone has the right to choose how they identify. I personally use the term autistic, or I'll say on the autism spectrum, because for me, it's an identity. It's a part of who I am. It's not a bad thing. Just like I don't say, oh, I'm a person with this. I'm a person with African-Americanness and Blackness. You know, I'm a person with parentness. No, I'm a parent. I'm a Black woman. So I'm not a person with autism, because to me, autism is all interwoven through my DNA, neurology, and it's not anything to be ashamed of, just like my gender is not anything to be ashamed of, or my weight, or my age, or my race. It's not anything shameful. It's neutral. It's not great. It's not horrible. It just is. And so for me, the identity first feels right. And so when you talk about intersectionality, which is why I have these concentric circles, this term gets used a lot. Well, I should say this term gets misused a lot. But Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined this term to talk about the fact that all human beings, no matter who we are, no matter if we're disabled or non-disabled, whatever gender, whatever neurology, whatever socioeconomic status, all of us have different privileges and marginalizations. There's not just one group who has all of the challenges and the other group has all of the benefits. We all have, marginalizations. I have certain marginalizations in the society we live in because of my race or my gender or my disability. And let's say I have a friend, well, I actually do have one, my friend Jason, right? Jason is autistic and is white and is male, comes from a wealthier family. I come from a working class family, comes from an upper middle class family. But Jason is, I'm a part-time AAC user, so I have the ability to speak as I'm doing now. I even do public speaking and all those things. There are times that I can't make my words come out, or I can't form words, or what I want to say doesn't come, and I have to type to communicate. But a lot of the time I'm able to, more than half the time I'm able to speak. Whereas Jason is almost exclusively an AAC user, is very seldom able to form verbal speech or spoken speech and types to communicate. So despite the fact that you would think on the surface, oh, Jason's a white male, he's got more privilege than me. The fact that he needs to type to communicate, or might have a caregiver with him in some capacities where might be alone, he may be infantilized and marginalized in a way that I'm not, where people will look to me as someone who has some type of normalcy or authority because I can speak with my mouth, a lot more than he can. And so when we're talking about identity, it's all of these different intersecting circles of oppression, and they're fluid. They're not the same. So just kind of like my stimming devices that can move up and down on my wrists, right? In some settings, your ever identity, your sexuality or your age or your gender or your race is a privilege, and in other settings, it's a disadvantage, and it's never the same. But when those things intersect, it means that it's not just one or the other. You will have to deal with the pros and the cons that come with them all. And then I want to talk about just in general, disability justice, social justice, because disability is a part of the human experience. It's a part of most human beings, almost everyone watching this. You're going to be disabled at some point in your life, maybe because of age, certain conditions that we are more higher predisposition to as we age, maybe for whatever reason. But it's something that happens to the majority of individuals. So of course, autism is one form of disability, but not the only. And so it's important that we show, just like we are, try to have respect for different genders and races and religions, that we have the same for disability. And so that, again, justice, to quote Cornel West, is what love looks like in public. So this presentation, again, is neither created nor destroyed. We're talking about energy. So being an autistic person, I love playing around with words and meanings of things and stimming. And so to do some research for this presentation, of course, I looked up what energy is, which is the strength and vitality required, to do what needs to be done, the capacity for doing work, right? However, it was very interesting to me to look at kind of the root. And so the first time that the word, and I'm going to butcher it because I can speak no Greek, but energeia was used and meant activity or operation. And the first time that it's found is actually in writing in the 3rd or 4th century by Aristotle. And he was talking about potentiality and movement and all of these different things. And so he looked at it as a concept broader than just what you can do. It wasn't just transactional. It was also about, like the operation, activity, movement, or potential for like love and joy and pleasure as well. So it wasn't just about achieving a task, right? And so by the 17th century, the term voice was used, living force. And then eventually by the 18th century, it became, we started the term, Thomas Young used the term energy, right? And so it was viewed as more reactionary at the time. There's a law of thermodynamics that basically energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It's just changed or transferred from one form to another. The amount of energy that exists is that amount. It is what it is. And so you might have learned in physics or physical science or whatever, just on Google or whatever, that there are 2 primary categories of energy. There's potential energy and then kinetic. I don't know if any of you have ever dated that guy or girl or person who had all that potential, right? That's the person you stay away from. Don't date the person with all the potential. You want your potential to be realized. So like people who may, their potential may remain over time and not really change. With energy, it's understood that it's in flux between being potential and translation. So kinetic energy is the energy of motion, of movement, right? So potential is what's held inside, what it's capable of, what it's, relative to its position or something that it has. And whereas the movement, what is it doing? How is it moving? That determines the kinetic energy. So all living beings, plants, animals, humans, which are animals, I guess, if you see, et cetera, we all need, we need energy to survive. And so I'm going to talk, I like to, when I do presentations, I like to talk a little bit about personal experience in addition to the general experience of others. And I also do like to incorporate some of my special interests. So one of my special interests is actually going to be a theme throughout this presentation, but I just want to talk a little bit about myself. So we're talking about neither created nor destroyed. So I was born to parents who were West African immigrants who were here in the United States for college. I'm the 2nd child of 3. And now that I know more, although there's no formal diagnosis for them, my mother, my grandfather, my niece, they're all on the autism spectrum. It's so obvious to me now. And now it's even in hindsight, it's obvious that I was, but we didn't notice. So I went unnoticed for a variety of reasons. I didn't make eye contact, but I'm a West African girl. That's kind of cultural, no big deal, right? I learned how to like mimic and follow the kids who were more social. I'd go in the mirror and move and talk the way they did so I could kind of figure out how to blend in. I dressed the way they did, even though I hated those clothes. Sensory wise, they were a nightmare, but just, if you blend in and don't stand out, it's harder to get bullied. I also was, hyperlexic, and I was in gifted and talented classes. So I think that with, kids in the gifted classes are all kind of weird, right? All kind of quirky. So some of the differences that I had were not noticed. And so because of this, I have had a variety of diagnoses throughout my life or assumptions about me, and most of which were not correct. And this led to life being very challenging. I could read on a college level, in early elementary school, but I didn't know how to tie my own shoelaces. My mother still combed my hair because I had a lot of graphomotor issues. I didn't get jokes. I would speak out and say things that people didn't want said. things that other people didn't notice, like the feeling of the soap in the soap dispensers at the school I attended, the gel, slimy, disgusting feeling, and the like overpowering perfumey smell that no one else even seemed to notice. They just washed their hands happily, you know, or the buzzing of the air conditioner, or the tick tick tock of the clock. No one ever seemed to notice these things. The fluorescent lights that gave me migraines that were so horrible that I could swallow pills dry at age 7, you know, because that's how often I had terrible migraines. So my family was accepting. They were like, okay, so she only eats this, this, and this, so we'll buy a bunch of that. She doesn't like tags on her clothes. We'll cut them off because otherwise she'll rip them out of her clothes. She can't have certain hairstyles because certain shampoos hurt. We have to buy this kind, or she wears this kind of shoe, or she repeats things a lot. She loves to listen to songs over and over and over again, whatever, right? They, you know, they thought it was cute, and, you know, they accommodated me. Society, however, thought I was weird. So when I was at home, that's just the way I was. You know, if I was flapping or spinning, that's cool. When I was outside, it was weird. And so seeing how difficult everything was for me, as opposed to everyone else, I just felt like such a freak, so broken, so deficient, so awful. And I developed depression at a very young age. I was diagnosed in the 6th grade, and actually started my first suicide journal at that time, actually, when I, you know, in true autistic fashion, debated all of the different ways that I knew that you could commit suicide and the pros and cons of each, so I could figure out which one to do. The reason I'm still here today talking to you is because, literal thinker, I couldn't find a way to make any of the ways that were acceptable to me work. I thought about drowning. I was like, that's too painful. Then I thought about if there was any way I could find like a knife or a shotgun. I didn't know where I'd find a shotgun, but I knew I could find knives. We had some in the kitchen. But the thought of my parents coming in and finding their daughter bloodied in the, you know, it's bad enough I'm dead, but now I'm bloodied and I have to find my body. I thought that would be too traumatizing for them. I didn't want to do that. Thought about sleeping pills. I was like, if I could go take some sleeping pills and go hide somewhere like in a park and go to sleep, and so no one will resuscitate me. But how would I get them? I didn't have an allowance. I didn't really have a way to get to the store and get money. You know, I thought about hanging, but again, I was worried about the pain and worried about my parents finding me and my head being all bloated. And I thought about slicing, you know, my wrists, but then if you don't do it properly, there's all these problems. So, you know, so basically again, it was, you know, it was just, I just wanted to not be here because I felt like everything about me seemed so wrong and my life just seemed so miserable, and everybody else seemed like they had this handbook about life that I didn't understand and that I would never understand, and I was just going to have a life full of misery, and it was just so much, I was so challenging for people as to how I felt. So I struggled with depression, anxiety for a lot of years. I was a master mask wearer. I had a pretty smile on my face, and I learned how to, you know, say what people need to say and do what you need to do. It didn't always work, you know, but I learned how to suppress my stims. So, and which developed, you know, so I wouldn't annoy the teacher by moving or whatever. I learned how to get the most social chatty friend who never shuts up. So then you don't ever have to talk. No one hears how awkward you are because they talk so much and everybody just thinks you're a good listener. Get a boyfriend early because now you have an excuse for why you don't want to go to social events. It's not that those things fill you with anxiety. It's because you're hanging out with your boyfriend, which you may not even really be doing, but that's just, again, he's your buffer. He's your protector from the world. I've had a lot of toxic friends. I've been abused in a number of ways by children and adults throughout my life that I wasn't even aware of because of being trusting and thinking that everybody was saying what they really mean and meaning what they really said and not realizing how false all of that was. So it was a difficult life. And that's not an experience that's unique to just me. So I want to end on strengths. I know that typically people are supposed to go strength-based and start with the positive and then go to, you know, and then go to the negative, but I'm going to flip that. I'm going to start with this harder stuff first, kind of some of the challenges and the difficulties. I'm going to talk about that a little. And then even though that's a downer, we're going to take our break, do some Q&A, and then I'll go into the positive aspects of, again, the fact that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and neither are we, and how to, you know, positively harness that energy of being autistic. So just like the forms of energy, the different forms of energy, if you think about them, gasoline and, you know, or food or, you know, coal. I mean, there's so many different types, you know, there's wind energy, there's solar energy. So utilizing different forms of energy, if not used properly or if not regulated appropriately, can create a lot of problems. Similarly, if autistic people are not understood or not in the right environments, not given the right supports, not allowed to have a sense of autonomy or a presumption of competence, then you'll see similar chaos as what you see with pollution and runoff from our forms of energy. So you know, in the world, we can have, you know, we have smoke and, you know, air pollution and all types of things. You know what I mean? We have, you know, what was supposed to be forms of energy that have been used for weapons and, you know, things that warm us, but also set us ablaze. It's the same thing with autistic people. So we have a pervasive condition that is different. So we have social communication differences, and those things can be used in harmful ways, or they can be used to weaponize us. We have we like things structured certain ways. We have sensory differences, and those things can be challenging in some settings. For example, I wear these, you know, like you see that I have these on. Somewhere next to me, I have another stimming device that's a slinky that I have dropped apparently, but I wear it on my finger. And I have another one that's like a coil. So I keep these in my purse, my backpack, my car, so that when I'm overwhelmed, I can use them. And, you know, there have been situations, for example, a traffic stop, where I was stopped by an officer. I'm a Black woman living in the South, you know, and, you know, unfortunately, people like me are, you know, more likely to be stopped at traffic stops, even if you're not speeding or breaking the law or what have you. And so he wasn't stopping me to be malicious. I think my light was blinking or, you know, like going out, you know, but when he came to the vehicle and went up to it, I had my stimming device. And, you know, he asked me a question, you know, so I'm stimming, and he saw this device, and then he freaks out and goes for his gun. What is that? And I'm not understanding how to explain what it is because I'm terrified. And so he says, "What are you doing?" And I say, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Stop that." I'm like, "Stop that." Again, echolalia. When I'm nervous, sometimes it helps me to comprehend what's going on by repeating. But he could think he's being mocked, especially since I was doing it in the exact same tone that he had. He had like a twang, like, what are you doing? I was like, "What are you doing?" You know, that's just an autistic thing, but it wasn't to be mean. It was just the way it came to my mind. And then so he asked me out of the car, and I didn't have my stimming device, so I'm flapping. He could have thought I was trying to hit him. I could not be here, you know, in this situation. Because this could be, you know, this could have been misconstrued. There have been other situations where autistic people have been mistaken for being drunk or on drugs when they're not, just because of the way that they speak or move or think or, you know, is different. Sensory situations, there are certain places that are, you know, I can't tell you how many times when I first started graduate school, I had to leave in tears because we had a projector that we used, you know, and it made a buzzing noise. The buzzing noise continued even when you stopped using the projector. And everyone else, it was probably annoying, but their ears would adjust, but mine would not. And it would create so much pain. And I would sit there trying to endure it, trying to ignore it, trying to do whatever I could. I had, you know, earplugs and this and the other, but then I can't hear my classmates and the teacher, or fluorescent lights that give me headaches, or so many things. Times I haven't been able to eat because of the things that are around me. You know, these things, you know what I mean? And then sometimes people just simply don't give us a chance. So there's a number of people who are on the autism spectrum who have difficulty in school settings or social settings because people are misunderstanding the way that they interact. There's people who don't get jobs because they've got a lot of, you know, intelligence and talent, but they come off so weird that it's hard for someone to think that they want to offer them a job, or they're not schmoozing properly at the water cooler in the workplace when they do have a job, or they're speaking their mind, or they're doing like when I was a kid and the teacher writes something on the board that's spelled wrong, and I raise my hand and say that it's spelled wrong, and the teacher, you know, sarcastically says, "What, do you think I'm stupid or something?" And I say, "No, I don't think you're stupid. You're not that smart because you spell a whole lot of things wrong. You make a lot of mistakes, but you do have a teaching credential, so obviously you're somewhat smart." And I didn't realize it was a rhetorical question. I mean, so I got sent to the office, you know, things like that. You know, I didn't realize when your friend says, "Do I look fat in this dress?" You're not supposed to say yes, even if she does. You're supposed, you know, I mean, I should say it looks, you know, tight around the middle or something. But I guess that's why husbands and boyfriends get in trouble with their wives, because they haven't learned that, I guess, the neurotypical world wants you to lie. When they say, "How are you?" You're supposed to say fine. They don't really care how you really are. Say fine, the end, you know, and so on. So there's a lot of things that are unclear. And so this makes life very challenging for us. There's a lot of traits that we have that are beautiful, wonderful, creative, engaging things that can improve the world. Indeed, like Temple Grandin talks about the fact that autism all the different types of neurologies in mind, but to specifically talk about autism, that some of the traits that we have in terms of pattern recognition, in terms of singular focus, in terms of perseveration, in terms of just the way we view things and our sustained interest and so forth. Obviously, you can see how when our societies became more agrarian, when we became more settled, how some of these traits would have been able to be helpful. And indeed, when I look at cultures, when I look at the traditional herbalist or medicine man or woman in my culture of my family heritage or others, or when I look at other things, I see traits that look very, very autistic. And when I read the Bible, John the Baptist sounds really, really autistic. Only ate honey, wild honey and locusts, only wore a certain thing, spoke and said things that got on people's nerves, even though it was true. So we've been around, and we can thrive, but we can also shrink and wither away if if the energy around us is toxic. Which leads us to facing a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of discrimination, for people on the autism spectrum, no matter what gender, no matter what race. But if you are of a marginalized race or gender, it is even more so. We can look at the statistics of educational attainment. We can look at out of school suspension and expulsion and discipline records. We can look at the late diagnoses of certain groups. So we can look at who's more likely to have the AU educational label as opposed to emotionally disturbed or occupational defiance disorder. We can look at the rates of juvenile justice or even the penal system for adults, and we can see overrepresentation of disabled people in general, especially of people with neurodevelopmental disabilities. We see a lot of people of color who are undiagnosed or late diagnosed autistic, and the outcomes that they have are simply not equivalent to that of their peers. There's places like the Judge Rodenberg Center, which to this day in Massachusetts has between 150 to 200 people living there. They all have disabilities. Many of them have neurodevelopmental disabilities, learning disabilities, autism. This is a place, their website, one of their websites, they have a more modern website for their center, but they have maintained effectivetreatment.org for many years. And the effective treatment that they're talking about are behavioral skin shocks, which have been designated as legal torture according to the United Nations, a formal report from the United Nations. But if you are a disabled person and people can't get through to you, often a lot of the treatments and interventions that we're given are very compliance-based, are very, very dehumanizing. 40 to 60 hours a week of doing this. Don't answer your child if they don't say this, or if they don't ask for it the right way, or if they point. Put something, take their hands or sit on their hands, if they stim. And I know some of this stuff isn't happening, but some of this stuff very much is. If your child doesn't touch this or say this or do this, you ignore them. And so when is the time for them to be a child, to be a human? And if you are overstimulated and you melt down or you have challenges and you are sent to places like the Judge Rodenberg Center, which is a residential facility, you will wear a backpack on, light backpack on your back where you have electrodes strapped to your arms, legs, and torso, and you are given voltage of literal electric shock for not taking your jacket off fast enough, not standing up straight, flapping your hands, uttering a curse word, even if you have Tourette's, being cold, ridiculous things, not making eye contact. I'm not talking about you got in a fight with someone. I'm not talking about arson. I'm talking about things that are hallmarks of disability. And this federally funded center still exists to this day, even though the FDA has been trying to rule skin shocks as unconstitutional. This center still exists and says that it works. Then there's features like the talk, which I mentioned to you all a little earlier about my stop, but I have privilege in that I am a woman. So I have children who are on the autism spectrum and children with other disabilities. And my children are all Black. I have adoptive and biological children. And at home, I talk with them about how not to behave around the police because you can draw their attention. And again, police, I'm not anti-police. I think that, people, who use their power and do things wrong in any profession, educators, medical professionals, what have you. There are a lot of great police officers. There are also those who have preconceived notions about certain people. So if you're already a person of color, your mannerisms, your stereotypy as an autistic person can put you in danger. And so you need to know how not to dress and how not to act, not because there's anything wrong with dressing or acting that way, but just as hopefully as a way to keep you alive longer. And so we're going to take this is where we're going to stop temporarily for questions, comments, and then we're going to get into my favorite part of this keynote, which will be talking about energy, and it'll be using my special interest Dragon Ball Super Dragon Ball Z. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can facilitate we can have help facilitating these questions and comments.
Thank you, Morénike. So we do have a couple questions that have come in. One is from someone who works with families of children on the autism spectrum. And they're wondering if you can give any thoughts on how to help parents overcome the emotional exhaustion of working, emotional exhaustion of challenging behaviors that are sometimes present in children on the spectrum, and if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, thank you. And actually, sorry, I had it muted for a moment because I was kind of handling some of that behavior myself. With my husband and I were tag teaming with my children. And so, I think it's a very valid question, and it is difficult because I'm not going to, I believe in being honest. And so there's two schools of thought. There's way more, but there's two schools of thought, neither of which I agree with because I feel like they're both too absolute. There's the autism is horrible. It destroys your life. You're going to have to, your child's never going to get married, never going to meet anyone. You're never going to be able to leave them alone. All they're going to do is smear feces at the wall, bang their head, et cetera, and it's awful and it's terrible and we need to find a cure. And I don't believe in that at all. I do have a child with intellectual disability who is not on the autism spectrum, who has some of those other, what people would say, low functioning challenges, challenging behaviors, aggression, things like that. That's not unique to autism only, although it can present with autism. And I think my son is an inherently wonderful person, and his intellect or his ability to communicate a certain way, or the fact that he's not, some scholar, like my other child that's gifted and in Mensa or whatever, doesn't make him any less. And then there's the other side, butterflies, rainbows, unicorns. Autism is so wonderful, it's phenomenal, and there's nothing wrong with it, it's not a disability. And that's not true either. It is a disability. Yes, it's a different ability, but it's a different ability that's also a disability. Now, if we're talking about the social model of disability, yes, if we had a society that was more accommodating, it may not be disabling to everyone, but there are certain aspects of autism that might be disabling. I don't want to walk into a certain room and the fluorescents hurt me, but that's just the way that it is. I don't want that to happen. That's not me being ashamed of myself. And so I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle, that there's strengths and there's challenges. And I think that parents, so one way that I think that they can do is first try to, it's very hard, but I say one thing that you can try to do is really observe and try to preempt some of the things that cause issues. I know, for example, my son used to do a lot of headbutting. And I found out later, it was like, for him, it was sensory seeking. And it's also something he would do when he was frustrated. So I try to find some ways to kind of provide that input, or, that were less harmful for him. Certain things you let go. You explain a lot of things, try to give a lot of leeway, grace, and space, and try to find out what's behind the behavior, but not punishing it. And really, really building to their strengths and their special interests, that helps a lot too. And sometimes it's the environment. So smaller school setting, like a smaller educational setting, a smaller environment for my children does wonders. We don't, now we don't do the Walmart Saturday morning thing. We don't do the big loud birthday parties, because those cause meltdowns. That's where I'm going to see behaviors. That's where I'm going to see struggles. So we've kind of tried to adjust and adapt aspects of our lives to try to, naturally absorb some of the stress that would lead to the behaviors. And then also we talk through them and we try to find solutions and ask, when they're not dealing with it, try to find solutions or things that they can do that are different and talk them through them and try to remain calm. It isn't fun. It's definitely difficult. I would urge you to try to find a very, if there is a provider that you can trust, who has a holistic, way of thinking or being, and they might use kind of like interactive interventions, and that, to help reduce anxiety and increase communication. Those things can really help. I'd hesitate to say to over-medicate, because I think a lot of, unfortunately, disabled people, and autistic people in particular, are given things that actually make things worse for us. And so it's not that I'm anti-treatment or anti-medicine by any means, but I just think we need to make sure it shouldn't be our go-to. We need to make sure that's really actually what's happening, what's going on. And then some things I think you just kind of have to roll with the punches. I don't know if you all have noticed, but I have an injury here. This is a dental injury I had as a middle school student, and I've recently re-injured it in adulthood, partially because of sensory stuff. I know that I'm not supposed to chew on that tooth because it's a bonded partial tooth from an injury when I was a teen, but I have sensory stuff. So sometimes just wearing things or having things on me is not enough. Sometimes I need to have texture or feeling in my mouth, and instead of putting it on my molars, I bit down on the front teeth, that there was a risk that I could create damage. And I know this. I'm in a doctoral program. I'm a parent. I'm a professor. I tell my children not to do certain things. And yet sometimes the urge is very strong. Trichotillomania is something that I struggle with because of stress, hair pulling. So now I wear my hair in twists, locks, to minimize that, because if my hair is loose, I'm more likely to pull, twist, and have bald spots. So sometimes it's about what do you have around you and what can you do, what can you compensate for those challenges with other things that you can replace them with.
Thank you. We have another question that says, professionals are increasingly aware of the increased risk of suicide among autistic people. What advice do you have for us about how to screen or ask teens about thoughts of self-harm?
That's a really good question. And despite the fact that I was suicidal at a very young age, I was in therapy, I was, I wasn't asked the question in a way that I, as an autistic person, even though I wasn't diagnosed at the time, could answer it truthfully. The screening questions didn't really have anything to do with me. And some of the things that they're looking for, like, don't necessarily apply. Have you had a change in the amount of your eating? Maybe not. Certain amount of things anyway. Or maybe you're super social even though you're not social. Or maybe you're not social at all and you're kind of hang back from everyone. So some of the things that they're looking for, these drastic changes may not manifest in that way. And then so for me, what it would have really helped is for people to figure out ways for me to share information that might have alluded to, I think developing a relationship is important. So I didn't want to burden people with my problems, and you quickly learn that people get annoyed by you not understanding things or not knowing things or doing things. So you try to reduce the amount of that when you can, and then you're full of anxiety because of that. And that might make you ask more or do more. So if someone would sit down and communicate with me about, like, let's say I'm info dumping, or I'm, talking about a special interest or perseverating, if the person engages in a conversation with me in that way or over an interest that maybe they may not have share it with me, but they're expressing some interest in it, then that opens up the gate to talking about that thing and then expressing certain things that might be clues or signs of how I'm feeling or what I'm concerned about or what, what I think, or I might just start talking, word salidation like we do sometimes when we're, and our mannerisms might, behavior is also communication. I think that sometimes people, if a person just maybe they're overwhelmed today, but it might be a sign, there might be something going on, so I think that the problem is that I think that if a person is already coming from the mindset that this person's already unhappy and this and that, then you think that's the baseline and you may not notice what's going on, and you don't have to necessarily be unhappy or depressed or anxious, regardless of what challenges you might have or difficulties with functioning that you might have. But if you're already assuming that and you think that's all part of the autism, part of the spectrum, then you're missing the very subtle cues that could have been helpful. Just because the person's not crying, their face looks normal. I mean, I used to think didn't have tear ducts. All the girls I knew could weep at the hat. They were always crying. I was like, okay, like I didn't understand. You got out in the game and you're crying. Your boyfriend dumped you. You're crying. All this crying. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why you had to cry just because you were sad. It just didn't make sense to me. So, and sometimes someone would do something to me and I'd keep a poker face or maybe even smile because I was kind of caught off guard, didn't know how to react. So the person may not appear to be down. But I think that Suicidal ideation is huge. I mean, I think that I've surpassed the age that a lot of autistic people die at because of suicide. Many of us don't live, past, a certain point in our 30s. And there's a huge amount of risk for youth. And I think that the way we're talked about in society, we're pretty perceptive. People talk about you like you don't understand when you're right there, or, or the way that people talk about dealing with this, or, like you feel like you're a burden. It certainly makes you want to feel like the world would be better for those that you love if you weren't around with your autism causing them problems.
Great, thank you. We have a couple questions here on regarding your sensory processing differences.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any thoughts about how, if you could share with us how you've coped with your those differences, and, both maybe a school setting, or also to, if you have thoughts on how kids might tolerate medical procedures in a different way, or just some strategies for how you have coped with sensory processing differences.
Yes. So I think that I think there's some great OTs out there. Maybe there's some horrible ones too, but we've had, like, for my family, both my autistic children and my non-autistic children who have other disabilities, we've used occupational therapy, both in early intervention and, in the school setting, and then even as teens. And I wish I had some help. Like, growing up, I had nothing, no speech therapy, no occupational therapy, no tutoring, no special ed, no 504, no nothing, not in elementary, middle school, high school, college, work accommodations. I just fell through the cracks. And I think about how different life could have been if I could have had noise canceling headphones and not stressed out, or could have had, a quiet place to go, or something sensory to do, so I'm not now chewing on my shirt or whatever. Some of the fights that I got in because I didn't understand what someone was saying, and I thought they were making fun of me or endangering me. And so some of the things that I did, one thing that I was very fortunate to have is that I have, a creative family. And so there were certain things around the house. I was allowed to play with almost anything. So if something was, so I could stim with all types of things. And then I developed a lot of things that I could do, because I learned that stimming and spinning and this and that, you can get in trouble at school, which I did. You get tired of being put in the corner because you're flapping. So I started to learn how to do a lot of internal stimming. So probably the majority of the time, even now I'm speaking to you all, I have sometimes something that's running through my head, song lyrics, some kind of poem, scripting some parts of a movie. Jewelry helps. Now, for some people, this is awful, but as a preteen and a teen, I always wore jewelry that dangled because of the sensory input was so phenomenal. I had things that I wore. They weren't as, they kind of occupy, I guess they would be like jewelry. That's not what they were called at the time. But we kind of made them as that, something I could put in my mouth, but it still looked socially acceptable. Some of my clothes I stemmed with, hair. And so, and then I do things like, and I'll, when I show my screen again, there's a place where I show what's inside my purse. So I carry things, I have things with me. I have sunglasses, I have headphones, I have earbuds too, because they look more, discreet or whatever. I have sand, like the little kind that you buy, I have little slinkies, plastic ones, and I have, chapstick, a certain type that I can wear. I keep these things around with me so I can get to them. I have to keep music on my phone. I keep something to read. In terms of medical treatment, so with my own children, one thing that and I know this doesn't work for everybody. So we have used some of the special needs providers that are willing to, be slower or book more time for an appointment, or, sedation if necessary for certain procedures. Child life specialists have been helpful, social stories, but I also talk very candidly to them. So I'll show them the website of where we're going to go. I'll talk about what's happening, show them the picture of the provider, and things like immunizations, for example, which my children hated. I would explain what it was. This is a weaker form of this illness. Yes, it hurts, but getting this condition that will do this, this, and this, that will create this illness will hurt a lot more. This is how your body will fight against it, and kind of get them interested in the cool aspect of it, and then explain that there's different techniques for numbing and cooling and this and that. And we looked up online how long it takes for an intravenous injection, the amount of seconds, and how long they pull it out, and the amount of rates of people who need to do it twice versus once. So you ask for the best phlebotomist, and how you can watch it. Some people psychologically, it's better if you watch it go in. Some people, it's better if you don't. And all of those types of things. So we talked about, for myself, talking myself through appointments. A lot of appointments I still don't like, unfortunately. growing up, my parents had us with a family care physician, dentist, and optometrist that were constant. And we had the same one for years. I know that's not the case for everyone. It doesn't work because they move or insurance changes. But knowing that the same person who had known me since I was X years old helped me. Once in adulthood, and when I moved out of state and I had to do these things on my own, I was a lot less likely to go to the doctor. I'd have to be, practically on my deathbed to go. And a lot of it is because, the settings are very uncomfortable. The questions that are asked, the lighting, the noise, the coldness, the who can be with you and who cannot, it's hard. I think some of the ways are just to try to be proactive and look before you meet the provider, interview, ask around, go visit, take your kid and kind of feel it out. Kind of like if you're buying a car, buying shoes, like really take that extra time. You might find a provider that is the, I guess, lesser of the evils.
How about, we'll take one more question now, and then we can do more questions at the end. And people can put questions in the Q&A as we go along, so please feel free to add questions. The last question we have here, this person has thanked you for sharing your story. They work as an outreach for an anti-trafficking program, and they were wondering how they might train the public on vulnerabilities of someone on the spectrum, and when it comes to facing labor or sex trafficking.
Oh my goodness, this might be the most important question of the night, because I think that people really have no idea how much at risk we are. And I'm talking about the fact, so in my family, I had an older brother he knew his sister was weird. We didn't know it was autism back then, but he wanted to make sure that no one would take advantage of me, because he saw what happened to the kids who were just the nerd or the geek, and they're not even neurodiverse. They're just not cool. So he made sure that my parents, being from this country, their style of dressing was not Western. So my brother made sure that I dressed in things that were stylish, even, that I could handle. He made sure I knew how to fight. Like he made it like a game, like play fighting. So if someone did bully me, I could defend myself. He, tried to make sure that I kind of passed, or whatever, could survive in life. And yet, so despite this, having some understanding of ways of self-protection, having an older brother to tell me about, parents who were together and close community, despite that, I still found myself in a lot of situations. I don't know, because I don't know the audience of who's listening, there's certain acquaintance situations or dating situations that ended up very, very harmful, and I misread cues from people. There have been a couple of work situations where there's been like harassment, and I think we really do believe that people are lying to seem dumb. It's just so much work. You got to come up with it. So I think that I think people need to realize they're looking for a particular thing with trafficking, and it doesn't have to be that. When people want to connect, so we're so antisocial, we don't like people, we're so weird. That's not true. So someone seems like they like us, they seem nice, they seem honest, they seem, trusting, they seem interested. We could so easily be. It's so easy to feel that it's so easy, sadly, to fool us, to deceive us, to manipulate us. And we are, I know that there are a lot of people, whether undiagnosed or not, who are trafficking survivors, people who are in, sex work and, adult, the adult entertainment industry, because, they're autistic. And for some people, it might be by choice because of, various reasons. Maybe other traditional employment is difficult. Other times, it's a lot of us get put in situations where we are manipulated, taken advantage of by toxic people, and we find ourselves in situations where it's hard to get out of. And so I think understanding neurodivergence, understanding how it can present, that everyone's not the Thomas the Train loving Silicon Valley kid. It could be the kid with the baggy pants and who acts weird, or who doesn't get the joke. It could be the girl who what people are looking for. There is no look for autism, and I think that people could very easily the signs of someone who's in need of help, or someone who doesn't know that everyone is not to be trusted, that everything is not to be taken at face value, have to prove their worth, that words are not actions. Well, thank you. So we'll take some more questions. I'm going to try to rush through. Like I said, everyone, this is my first time doing this, and I just love this stuff, but I'm going to try to rush through it because I want to make sure that we have adequate time. So I don't know if any of you know that much about Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, it's a show. It's a manga as well as an anime. Right now, there's on Dragon Ball Superheroes, I think, so there's like different iterations of it, but it all starts, basically with this person. This is an alien. So if you think about Superman or another show that I love, Steven Universe, there's a lot of themes about the alien who came to the earth and saves the planet, and then all the adventures and stuff that they have. Goku, his given name is Kakarot, is from a warrior alien race that look like humans, only they have tails. Like monkeys. And they were being oppressed by a tyrant who took over and was using, the tyrant was using their strengths and their abilities against them, having them go to planets, destroy all the life there, and then sell them to the highest bidder and subjugate people. And so they were such good fighters and had such great battle instinct that they could do this from the time that they were very young. So he was sent as like a baby in a spaceship. They had a lot of advanced technology to Earth, but because of an injury early on, he didn't remember about his mission or anything about who he was. He was found by a nice elderly man who adopted him, raised him as his adopted grandson, and he realized the child was different. And so essentially Goku is very autistic, like he's very sweet, says the wrong thing at the wrong time, sometimes foot and mouth disease. He's kind of naive about certain things, but then when what he's good at, he is so freaking good. There is an autistic activist named Kasiana Sasamatsu who talks about autism as big love. It's go big or go home. There's no in between. It's either all in or all out. Either I won't touch this, or I want to eat all of it, and I'm, or whatever. Or I watch only this show all day, all night, or I watch no shows, or whatever. So he had a lot of abilities, natural ability in martial arts. And so he excelled and he was able to defeat adults. And then basically, so there all these different things happened, and people around him, his friends and, and family, started learning that he was different, but they still loved him. They accommodated his difference. He was great at some things. He sucked at some other things. Sometimes they had to come in and save him from himself. But ultimately, they improved because of being in his life. And he improves because of being in their lives. Together, they are interdependent and they help one another. And so he learns in adulthood about his true identity, that he is an alien because there's, and that there's still a few surviving members of his alien race. It was destroyed through genocide, but there's still a few surviving members, and they're coming to Earth, creating all this havoc, trying to take over, trying to destroy. He, and his friend, family, together protect the Earth. And there's all these different things that happen. But they talk a lot about power levels, powering up. Power, again, is another term for energy. And so I'm going to talk about some of the types of energy and how they relate to characters in Dragon Ball. But again, I won't be able to go into the detail that I'd like to. I'm so sorry, because I spent a little too much time on the first part. But hopefully you all will still, gain from it. So again, Goku, Vegeta, who's also from his alien race. This is Goku's son, who's half human. Piccolo, who's another alien, and then some humans, and just they're, we call them the Z fighters. There's also some androids and some other people. There are a lot of people who were once enemies or, non-supportive and problematic and narcissistic and difficult, who once given some understanding and some patience and, and some chances, changed for the better and actually became, some of the greatest allies. And then there's still some that didn't and were still horrible. So I'm going to talk about a couple types of energy. Again, we talked about energy's potential and elastic. I'm sorry, that's not true. Potential and kinetic. And this is one form called elastic energy. So, if you've ever had anyone, snap an elastic band on you and they pulled it back, it can be very painful indeed. And so elastic energy, elastic potential energy is caused by subjecting an object to a change in its size, position, or shape from the norm. You're compressing it, stretching it, deforming it some way. By conforming in this way, there's two things that are going to happen. Either you're going to break it or irreversibly alter it because of the way you're pulling it. Like, so if you snap this rubber band, it'll never, be elastic again. Or if you think about like cartilage or certain things, like people's bodies, why people sometimes need to get surgery because they've stretched out their bodies and the elasticity is no longer there. Or it has so much energy stored that when it becomes kinetic, boom, it's just like full of so much power. And so an example of that is, Goku is an example of that actually, and so is his son Gohan, because Goku didn't know the abilities that he had. He knew he was talented, but he didn't realize what was within him, and neither did anyone else, because there had never been a reason to really know how to tap into it. But in adulthood, he learns about the ability to become a Super Saiyan. I'm hoping, I've got a few video clips. I will not show them all because we don't have time, but I'm hoping I can, yikes. Okay, so I'm hoping I can show these. Great commercials, wonderful. Is the volume okay? I'm sorry, let me get some context. Goku's, I told you about people coming to the earth to destroy it and terrorize everyone. So someone from Goku's original planet which is planet Vegeta, where the Saiyans live, come and they kill innocent people, including Goku's best friend. This is the best friend he's had around, his Krillin, who Krillin doesn't always get Goku. Goku's weird, he's different. So it's kind of like the autistic person with the neurotypical best friend, but that neurotypical best friend rolls. You know what I mean? That's their day one. And this is Krillin. He's always got Goku's back. They look out for each other, and he was harmed and killed. And Goku is so overwhelmed that he is so full of enraged that he taps into an energy that he didn't know he had, and which is the ability to turn to a Super Saiyan, and it transforms the way you look and also your ability to fight. All right, so I'm going to stop it, but basically when you become Super Saiyan, you transform, your hair turns blonde, your eyes turn blue, and then there's a later form where your hair will turn blue, then silver, and then, you know, red. There's all these different forms of it, but you have the ability to fight in a manner that is almost unbelievable. And so again, this was within him, this was created by the anger or the rage, the fear, the hopelessness of his best friend being killed and the earth being at risk of being destroyed. And then there's electric energy. So we know about different forms of electric energy, and energy is electric energy is interesting because whereas the elastic is potential that turns into kinetic, electric is kind of a combination of potential and kinetic, because it's the charge you have internally, but it's also the charge of the items around you. So I'm only going to show very little bit of this, but there are two. So there's the concept called fusion.
Morénike, sorry to interrupt you. The video sound was just coming through a little quiet. So our staff has asked if you could either do the volume, or you might have to
talk through them.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry, everyone. Well, there really wasn't, I'm sorry you couldn't hear the volume, but what was happening was primarily just music, kind of like mood music, like ramping up. And then Goku was saying, I won't let you get away with this. And then he powered up. So even without the sound, basically what happened is he was so overwhelmed with what had been happening that he just couldn't, he broke, and something rose within him, and so thank you for that. So knowing that, actually, I probably will not show the other clips. I'll just kind of talk through them. But so there's a concept called fusion, where you do a particular movement or dance to fuse with another person, and temporarily for about 30 minutes to an hour, you, instead of being your individual selves, you're a combined new person with new abilities and strengths. And but you have to do it properly, otherwise it's going to turn out disastrous. And so it's so much easier to show it than to just tell it. So there won't be volume. I'm going to briefly show, and I'll skip through it. These two boys were trying to fuse. If you don't have your finger pointed exactly right, instead of fusing to someone that's like you but bigger and better, you can either become way too scrawny or way too big because you didn't fuse properly. Because just like with electricity, depending on, lightning can strike something depending on where it's located, and danger can happen. There's also some other Saiyans who live in another universe, and they come from a totally different type of world. So unlike the original Saiyans who were warriors from the time that they were young, these ones come from a peace-loving planet. They've never really had war and strife and famine, and so they've never really had bullying and name calling, and so no one in there that is known in their culture's history to have ever become a Super Saiyan, because they don't fight. They don't have to, really. And so they don't have, their emotions they never find themselves in situations where that happens to them. But we do find later that they learn some other tactics. So it may not be, so being provoked to anger is not for them the best way to demonstrate their abilities. They've learned some other ways to do what others can do without being angry. And in the autistic community, we often need to do that. We need to learn ways to do things or say things or understand or recognize things, even if they aren't what others, if they aren't intrinsically natural to us. We can find ways to still achieve, goals in a good way, in a helpful way, without changing who we are. Magnetic or gravitational pull is another. And so these two, or this is Goku, the original character, and this is Vegeta. Vegeta was actually a prince from their original planet, and he came to the Earth to convince Goku to work for him, and at destroying the worlds around them. And when he didn't, he was determined to kill him and everyone around him. They were fierce enemies. Over time, Goku's kindness and genuineness, in spite of himself, Vegeta was won over and changed. And so now he's always been frustrated at the fact that things that were easy for Goku were hard for him, because who is Goku? He's a lowly nothing. And if you think about that, there's certain things that autistic people can do that are naturally or easily that are hard for other people. And there's things that other people can do that we cannot do hardly at all. And he didn't understand it, and he was frustrated by it, but he learned that by being in Goku's position, they built off of each other, and he got better as Goku got better. So instead of trying to be him, he decided to be himself and celebrate his strengths and talents, and his own grew through that. Then there's radiant energy. So radiant energy allows you to time skip. It's like the light, the illumination, and it's pretty awesome. And so I use HIT as he's a character who can't power up in that way, but he has learned, he watches an environment, he figures things out, and he adapts quickly to make changes so that he can be successful. He's also a loner and he's successful at things that he does, but he's not really around a lot of people, doesn't have the greatest social skills, people don't understand him. So I see a lot of things of autistic traits in that. Then there is chromodynamic. And this is symmetries of nature, strong interaction between forces. They may be similar, they may be way different. I think about myself as an autistic person. Some of the people that I'm very close to are almost twice my age. And some of the people that I'm close to could practically be my child if I was a teen parent. Friendships, connections, they look different in us. Growing up, I had a lot of guy friends, not because I was necessarily tomboyish, but just because it was a lot easier to understand the way guys communicated and what they did and what they wanted than girls with all the hidden rules and weirdness. So there are some characters in the Dragon Ball Z and Super series who are like this. The androids 17 and 18 are siblings, and they look out for each other and they help each other out. There's Chaozu and Tien. They look very different in size and mannerism and communication, but they help and support one another. So Tien is always looking out and supporting Chaozu, and Chaozu loves Tien. It's not this imbalanced relationship. It's not like a peer buddy. This one might have advantages or abilities, but the love and the connection and respect is mutual. It isn't like a pity type of thing. And we don't need that as autistic people. We need supports, yes, but we don't need people who don't really want to be around us and who feel sorry for us and just tolerate us. We want people who care about us, who like us as we are, but push us to change. Piccolo and Gohan, another situation. Gohan is Goku's son, so there's a big age difference. And so originally it was kind of like a mentor-student relationship, and Gohan has actually surpassed Piccolo in strength and ability, but because Piccolo is so brilliant, the way he can figure things out, the way he can understand, the way he can engage. And that's the way that we are. When I think about the beauty of neurodiversity, there's so many things that young neurotypicals can do. They're so amazing and figure out, like my husband is not neurotypical, but he's also not autistic. So he's like my translator. I'll run things by him and ask this, what does this mean if I write this email? How will people take this? What do you think of this? He'll figure, and I'm like, wow, I would have never thought of that. It's like having, you know what I mean? Like a, you know, Google Translate to people's ideas or neurology. Similarly, there's things that we can do that y'all suck at, really, really, really suck at. And so together, it's like, you know, we could, you know, our strengths and weaknesses together make such a beautiful person. So though Gohan has a lot more strength than Piccolo, he's not the, you know, he doesn't have the strategy ability. He doesn't have the intelligence. He doesn't have the calmness that he has. The Zenos, they're very childlike, but they're very, very, very powerful. So autistic people may, you know, like now there was a time when I wanted to look and present myself in a certain way. And now I don't care. I don't care about telling y'all that I like this show that's animated, that's illustrated. I'm not gonna only sit and talk about serious stuff or whatever. I'm going to be my real self. And so the Zenos are childlike and free and innocent, but they're not dumb. They're not, you know, there's nothing wrong with being that way. They just are authentic. And there's still a very quiet and strong power they have, despite the fact they don't present like everyone else. Then there's chemical energy, which is the one we're most familiar with, photosynthesis or light, you know, food, the things that we take in to be able to, you know, power things around us, batteries, respiration, you know, gas or wood. And so I'm not going to show these because I want to make sure we have time, but these are characters that absorb others, take their energy from them, or take their form and make it part of their own form. And in doing so, they take on the strength of those people. Now, in these cases, they're doing it in a way that's where they don't have consent to do so. But there's a way that we can also, because chemical energy is something that's stored inside and not observed until there's a reaction. So there's certain things, there's also something in the show called sensu beans. They're these little green beans. If you eat them, they restore your energy. So sometimes it's draining for me to be around people. So if I have a conference call or a couple of conference calls in a row, maybe the next day I'm typing on them all. I'm not going to talk at all. If I have to go to a wedding or something, I'm going to make sure that the 3 days before that and the days after that, I'm not dealing with people because I can't do it. I am a college professor at a 2-year college, and I have my office hours and other time kind of stacked and built in a certain way so that I can come down, so that I can decompress. So sometimes if it's a music or eating a certain thing or doing a certain thing that we enjoy, whether it's a child or adult, sometimes we need that chemical energy to refresh us. We need that sensu bean, because dealing with the world is challenging. Or you could be someone's sensu bean. Could you be the chemical energy that brings them light, that brings them energy, that brings them hope, that fuels them by your positive words, by your encouragement, by your love? Then there's rest or mass energy. And this is my favorite. This is a societal one. And again, I talked earlier about autistic people and neurotypical people, or just all people in general. We need the diversity that exists in the world. And so this is a type of energy that's the cumulative energy of everyone around and existing in a system. When it happens, you create something called a spirit bomb, which is like a big cloud of energy and light and power. And so when I think about our society, we've made progress, but we haven't made enough. We're not saying people are refrigerator mothers and all that kind of stuff, but we are still saying people are afflicted with autism, stricken with autism, dealing with autism, suffering from autism. Read any peer-reviewed journal. Read the way people talk about it. My son may have autism, but autism does not have him. So does it have him? Like it's got him in a chokehold? Is autism his captor? You know what I mean? Or is it just a part of who he is? So this is everyone, even humans, regular people, animals, things that seem like they don't have much power. All together, they have tremendous power. And the spirit bomb has saved the earth countless times in Dragon Ball. And so I want everyone, some people, oh, I'm just a mom. Oh, I'm just a teacher. Oh, I'm just an autistic teen. You're not just in anything. You've got power that combined with that of others is freaking amazing. There is no just. Be proud of who you are and know what you're bringing to the table. And then there's nuclear energy. It can be used in a positive way, nuclear energy for good, but it can also be used in a horrible way, as we know from, nuclear, warfare and destruction. And so these two characters are unique characters, Broly and Kale, in that they are demure and quiet and, seem pretty, you know, forgettable. But when they transform, they don't transform just as a regular Super Saiyan. They transform to a version called Berserk, where their body bulks up like, you know, Hulk style, and they have tremendous power. They can literally destroy a planet. But the problem is, it's so powerful, it's almost out of control. And it's very difficult for them to control it, but they can. But they've got to learn how to control their emotions and self-regulate to be able to do it. Autistic people, we can be a lot. Meltdowns and things like that. Life is difficult for us. We have so much to bring to the table if we learn how to control it. That's it. Not pretend like it's not there, not get rid of it, but learn how to regulate other aspects of our lives so that we can have this one under control. Like, think about the animal that yields itself willingly, you know, and is not taken, you know, and not captured, but yields itself to, you know, the human, you know, that it works with, and they're like a team. You know, think about these types of things. This is what, there's a lot of destruction and fear with the Berserk form, but there's so much wonderful potential in it for good. And so I want to make sure, I have no idea what time it is, and my little one has my phone, so unfortunately I can't keep up with the time. But again, I love the Dragon Ball Z Super series. The Steven Universe series, which is another one that I love very much, was kind of patterned after it. And it's also about an alien race, a young boy named Stephen, whose mother was very powerful. She was an alien. His father is a human. And he has aliens and humans in his life who love him. They don't have the powers he has. They don't understand all the circumstances that he deals with, the aliens that come to Earth and the burden that he possesses. They want to be there for him. Sometimes they're not good at it. They try, but they love him, and they make mistakes. But they love him. And together, those humans, you know, learn how to do really good jobs. And so, you know, and they learn how to fight in their own way. They can never be Steven. They can never use the powers that he has. Neither can the aliens, you know, but he's his own unique entity, but they rise up too in their own way. And this is amazing. And so I said earlier, I was going to share some items from my purse. So I have a slinky. I use different ones. I've got one in my hand right now, actually, but I keep slinkies and cush balls and, you know, little things. I keep communication badges because, like I said, sometimes I can't form words. So, you know, people need to know that you're not just being rude if you're not speaking to them. Pronouns, because I use both she and they pronouns. Earplugs. You know, I've got some headphones underneath here that you can't see. This is what's in my backpack, but you don't always have a backpack. I've got challenges with executive functioning. I'm the person who loses library cards and debit cards and keys and this and the other. So I keep them all in a certain place. My keys are hung right here. Wallet has to be right here. So I carry a very small purse because I can't tell you how many purses I've lost throughout my life because I'm going to leave it somewhere in a chair, whatever. So I carry a very small, like wallet sized purse that I can put around my body, like my neck, you know, and it's very hard to lose because I'm not holding it with my shoulder. It's just on. I keep things that I need in it because I never know when circumstances are going to, you know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Never know when I'm going to need. So this is a small bag that I have, and this is emptied out. I keep push balls, communication badges, you know, a certain type. I only use Carmex because I don't like the way the things smell and feel. And certain stimming devices, earplugs. I keep all of these in this little bitty plastic bag. It all fits because you never know what circumstances you're going to find yourself in, and you're going to be overwhelmed. The reason why my children don't, you know, and again, they're still going to sometimes have a meltdown in the store or whatever, is because I've got their stuff that they need. Bring this snack, bring this. You want to bring this toy, bring it. You want to do this? What time of day? You know, like I try to overthink and over prepare and over plan like a Boy Scout, prepared for anything. Circumstances to be ready and willing, you know, and people do this with babies. You don't leave without your baby bag. You've got your change of clothes, you've got your diapers, you've got your wife, you've got all kinds of stuff you probably don't need. You bring it anyway. We need to accommodate disability in the same way. There's no reason why in classrooms and work settings and relationships and communication that we can't be clear, that we can't use universal design. It doesn't hurt the non-autistic and it helps the autistic. So a lot of these pictures are, you know, I use Pixabay a lot because I don't want to be sued. So here's some of the information about those. This is my contact information. So my website is my name, Morénike Giwa, which is for Giwa Onaiwu. So it's spelled like morenikego.com. My email address is mgo@morenikego.com. And on social media, which I used to be a really, really active user. I'm a lot more sporadic now, but I do use sometimes it's @Morénike Giwa. And again, I told you all that I'm with the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network, or AWN for short, which was formerly Autism Women's Network. And our website is awnetwork.org. So again, the energy in the world is neither created nor destroyed. Neither are we. We've learned through all the different tactics and people using commercial bleach style enemas on us and hyperbaric chambers and casein free, gluten free, soy free, this and over medicating us and, you know, all of these different things that people have done, and, you know, compliance therapies, and we're still autistic. You can do whatever you want to do to us. We're still autistic. I can fake and pass, maybe not that well. Those of you who know autism probably like, oh, no, I'd spot her. You probably would. But for some people, I could pass if I wanted to. Why should I? But even if I'm passing, I'm still who I am at the core. I'm still Morénike, and I'm going to be autistic till the day that I die. Why be ashamed of it? Why try to destroy it? Why not build it? Why not grow on it? Why not improve it? Why not add to the world around me? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We do still have some time for questions and conversation. And again, if you don't have anything to ask me, maybe you just want to share something with everyone else. You know, this is going to be an amazing conference over the next couple of days. There's a lot of wonderful people sharing a lot of exciting things. So it may not have anything to do with my keynote. Maybe you just want to talk about something going on with the conference that you want to share, resources, an idea, a thought. And we'd love to hear from you because we're all in this together.
Thank you, Morénike. That was fabulous. Thank you for sharing your insight and your wonderful energy with us here tonight. That was fabulous. As Morénike said, she'll take a couple questions. I just want to let everyone know that we are, like she said, we're going to be resuming presentations tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and then Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And we look forward to seeing you guys over the next couple of days here. Morénike, we did have a couple questions about friendship and from parents whose children are struggling with friendships. And if you have any thoughts or advice on building and maintaining friendships.
Thank you. So I do have some. And so first, I want to say this. I am very proud to be an autistic adult, and I'm proud of who I am. But my children were diagnosed before I was. So I came into the parent world before I came into the world, you know, being a self-advocate. So that's what I knew first. I knew, and so I had the similar fears. I didn't think that it was like 9/11 when my kids got diagnosed, because I mean, before they were diagnosed, I had read all the stuff about it, and I pretty much had already, you know, figured it out. Once it was made aware to me, that is. Initially, I didn't know, but yes, the Spanish questions will be fine too. Thank you. But one thing that I struggled and still do with the whole friend thing, because, you know, so one of my, in terms of my autistic children, to talk about the two of them, one is a lot more social than the other is not. So one is, yeah, weird and active and kind of stuff, but, you know, still has friends and still kind of, and the other one is very much to herself. Like, I can't tell you, she loves her family. She's not mistreated, but I can't tell you a single friend that she has. And maybe her friend threshold is low, but as a parent, you still want, you know, you still worry, are they getting the socialization that they want? And even growing up myself, I had some periods where I felt so lonely. And, you know, like, and again, we talked about the being taken advantage of. I was always the smart girl. So everyone wanted me to tutor them, which AKA do their homework. And so people loved me because I didn't say no to anybody about anything. You want some of I have a lunch, this is my favorite snack and I don't eat anything else, but yeah, you asked for it, I'm gonna give it to you. You need help with the spelling, you need to cheat off my test. I mean, so I had friends in a bad way. I had friends who loved having me around because I gave the best advice, or because I could remember stuff and I could, you know, like if someone, oh, was such and such saying this, and I could parrot back what was said because of echolalia, you know, scripting, because I was gullible, because I was innocent, whatever, because I was a good listener, I didn't take up too much time or attention. So I had friends, and some of the times that I had friends were the loneliest periods of my life. And some of the times when I had peace were the times where I desperately wanted a friend, but it was better not to have these toxic soul suckers around me. What has worked for me, what started working for me in youth and adulthood, is friends that there's some kind of connection. So there's something we both like that kind of brings us together, that can kind of skirt the awkwardness, or there's a relationship where we value one another beyond what we have in common. For my kids, what I've tried to do is be engaged. So I volunteer, and it's horrible. It's hard for me as an autistic person, the whole small talk and room mom and all that. It's like torture. It's like literally frightening. But my presence makes things a little easier sometimes for my kids, because I can catch what they, you know, what I can kind of see and interpret, do for them, kind of my daughter and son, kind of like what my husband does for me, catch the nuances, because it's a lot easier to catch it with children than adults. So activities that they like, I let my children do a lot of online stuff, screen time. I'm not, especially now since the coronavirus, but even before that, I'm not all that strict about screen time because some of that stuff is so important for those of us who maybe not be able to connect as easily in person. I know that when I used to use social media very frequently, it was the best socialization that I had. It was what I could handle. And so I think that what's important, one thing that my parents did really well is they never made me feel bad about why people weren't coming over or pressure me or make me have play dates with people I didn't want to play with who I knew really didn't like me, but my parents didn't know. Or, you know, they offered support and they played with me too. And then, you know, and so I had like kind of non-traditional friends. And I think that ultimately friendships will develop. If you have your child involved in things that they like and they're comfortable, friendships might develop. They may not need a whole lot. One really good friend is worth so much more than a room full of fickle friends.
Thank you. We have a few professionals that love your use of Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, thank you.
And are wondering if you have any thoughts on how to incorporate the interests, especially those special interests of kids on the spectrum, into therapies or into ways to engage kids, and if you have thoughts on that.
I say freaking do it. Let me tell you, I know that there's this a lot of statistics about autistic people and unemployment and anomalies and all this kind of stuff. Or whatever, you know, issues, and they're very real issues. Some people I know who are so freaking brilliant and have difficulty keeping or getting a job. I've been the weird, rare unicorn that's been able to have and keep jobs, get almost any job I apply for. Why? Because I only apply for stuff that's in my special interest. If I'm not interested in it, I'm not applying. When I get in there, they know I'm engaged, I'm loving it. You can tell. They'll work with the other stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I will still dress and, you know, the way you're supposed to for an interview and all that kind of stuff and play those games, try to make eye contact, whatever. But I used to teach in K through 12. I now teach in the university setting. Incorporating special interests, the amount that a person will learn and the amount of engagement is so astronomical. I think about some of the students that I taught. This one little boy that they told me about how pre-literate he was and how he misbehaved and how he didn't do this and that. The boy was such an amazing artist. He was not an autistic child, but by playing he's spelling words because he couldn't do the same ones as the other peers. So when I gave him, like, you know, remedial ones, I've looked up stuff related to cars and car parts, brands or whatever. I let him draw as rewards, if, instead of giving him, maybe he didn't want candy or sticker, I let him have some extra drawing time, or I let him run around him. My college students, I have stuff, you know, I let them put stuff up on their screen, you know, right now we're virtual, but when we were in the classroom, change the screensaver to whatever you want, whatever weird music artist you like or whatever. Dig into those special, find out if they talk about something, if they mention it, Google that thing, find out some stuff about it, ask them questions. Believe me, we are more than happy to talk about our special interests so we can educate you and let you know a little more, because there's different things. Like, for example, I don't like Dragon Ball GT. So if someone just starts talking about GT, I'm going to be automatically turned off because I'm like, that's not me. You know what I mean? So you might want to know, you know, which type of Pokemon or which type of this, but listen to what they're talking about, what they're showing you. Maybe it's something they're carrying around. They're carrying something that they always have in their hand, or they're wearing something. Ask about it, find out, incorporate it. There's so many things that you'll find a way to build relationship, dialogue, discussion, connection. I talk about hard topics like, you know, protecting one's body from abusers and, you know, manipulation, you know, premature death from some of the concepts in some of these shows. My kids watch it with me. My husband, my kids and I, we are all Dragon Ball, everything. You know what I mean? Like, we see Steven Universe, my husband's not into that. The kids and I like that. I encourage you. I know that it's a little non-traditional, but you can find some things. Some of it are parallels. You can introduce difficult concepts or fun things or reinforce things with the characters. Put some decorations up. Have some things that they can mess with or use. Use some of the colors. Use some of the terminology. Just kind of sprinkle it in. And before long, they might help you craft a way to do it. In the classroom, in therapy, do it. You know, if you go online, cosplay one day as one of the characters, you know, and especially if you actually come to like it, even if it's not your thing, but if you come to actually like it, they'll sense that.
Thank you. We have a couple questions about younger children that are nonverbal or have fewer verbal skills. If you have any thoughts about ways to encourage communication or ways to communicate with those children that parents might find helpful.
Yes, my daughter was primarily non-speaking for quite a long time. I mean, she did have functional echolalia. So, you know, she wasn't saying mom, mommy, daddy, store, drink juice. She would, she would repeat something from a show. But whereas I know that a lot of people say echolalia is useless, it's not. It may not be spontaneous speech, but she'd say, for example, we used to have a potty power video that she would watch. And so she had to use the restroom. She'd say, I can use the potty and I'm okay. Like they sang in the song or whatever. She'd repeat something that from a character. So, but she didn't always use echolalia, and she was quiet a lot. And so certain things she did, like pointing or waving. So I got into the things she was into. So she liked looking at fans and circular things. So I'd start looking at them and looking at her, pointing them out. She liked certain things. I'd point them out and talk about the things that were around her. And I narrated my day. So I had no idea. It wasn't until later, they wanted to get her tested, all the different things that you when you're doing early childhood intervention and later on school stuff. They got her tested. They thought she was going to be intellectually disabled. They were shocked that she was highly gifted because she, again, wasn't very verbal. So they, there's a lot of misconceptions about what you actually know. And so they were really shocked. And these are, we went to psychologists, and these aren't just the school testing. And so a lot of things that I did was I narrated my day through. So it's almost like she's talking to me. I'd be like, okay, hon, we're going to have to go to the store. I'm going to need to get this. I'm going to need to get that. I'm going to need to get that. Oh, let's make sure we bring your binky or whatever, or let's this together. Oh, wow, look at that. Like, this is I talked like as if I was the narrator. I talked through everything that I did. Things that I put on, things that were going on. I had no idea if she understood or not, but I said it anyway. I had a feeling that maybe her receptive understanding was better than her expressive. And so when she did start to eventually talk, I feel like having that exposure to that language, that vocabulary, that development was really good for her. And I didn't pressure her to talk. Like, so, how people, so you've got that relative, oh, why don't you say my name? Why doesn't she talk? Or such and such is talking. I kept those people away from me. Don't stress my kid out. And then, they may not talk for 5 more years, thanks to you. You know what I mean? Or they may never talk, but we used the iPad. We used, simple things, you know what I mean? And then we found, I followed her mannerisms. There were certain body things she would do if she needed to use restroom, or there were certain ways that she would move or looks on her face. I learned to read those, and I'd say aloud, oh, use this. So I started to pair it with those. And so it was very interesting because when my son, he also used echolalia, but he spoke a lot earlier than she did, it was really odd because I wasn't, I still formed, so it was almost kind of like, okay, cool, we've got a head start. I can still do these things and form his vocabulary because he's talking, I don't have to start from back here, but I wouldn't have despair. Like some of the, a lot of people, there's a lot of autistic adults that I know who were non-speaking until they were 6, 7, 4. And then I know some that are still primarily non-speaking today. And some of the most brilliant people I know, and they love their parents and they love, and they understand a lot more if they have a way to communicate. Give them something to be their voice. That's just the thing that I urge. Give them an iPad, let them write, type to communicate, PECs, whatever it is. You can put them in speech therapy, but make it fun. Don't make sure it's a speech therapist that's encouraging of the fact that the child may not be a speaking individual or primarily speaking, and is not only forcing them to try to talk, but is also using other means so that they can protect themselves, express themselves, make their needs known.
Thank you so much. You have, I think we've gotten through most of the questions, but you have gotten lots of love from our attendees. So people who have said, thank you very much for sharing. Thank you for your energy. And we got a message that you're my hero and my mom hero. So
thank you.
Lots of thank you messages. And we really appreciate you joining us this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be with you all. I just appreciate all that you're doing. For those of you who are parents, I know it can be a thankless job sometimes, and I know I'm just going to be honest. My people, autistic adults, we can be kind of hard on your parents. A lot of it's like my parents used to tell me when I was growing up. It's because I love you. I used to be like, it doesn't feel like love. It feels really, So it's because we love your kids and we see the potential. Because you're actually engaged, you're still there. That is why we kind of, come on a little strong, but our the intentions are good. We know an aspect of your child that you'll never know because we share their neurology. You know an aspect of your child that we'll never know because you're with that child every day, day in and day out, every scraped knee, every laugh, every smile, every, bowel movement, whatever, so you have an intimate knowledge. Together, we can do so much better for your kids, for our own selves, for our And we need each other. So we're not enemies. We may, it's just like that relative who maybe has different political views than you, sometimes you agree to disagree, but there's a lot that we have that we can agree to agree about. And so we need you. We love you. Y'all get on our nerves sometimes, and we will call you out when you're doing ridiculous things or things that we think are not in your child's best interest or our community's best interest. But thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. Professionals, parents, thank you for your love. Thank you for not giving up on things. Remember how important allies were for almost every social movement, from the suffragist movement to the abolition movement to civil rights. It wasn't just the people who looked like me out there marching. There were plenty of people who were not facing those marginalizations, who were still right there, still there doing their thing, and they were still important. They still made change. They're still heroes. You are heroes, and we need you. So put on that cape and be ready tomorrow morning for your next keynote speaker.
Well, you're getting more thank yous, and I think it's
thanks.
fair to say that this has been an energizing and inspiring talk. So this is a great way to kick off the conference, and we look forward to seeing everybody for the upcoming sessions. But Morénike, you've set the bar high, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Everyone, thank you so much. You all are amazing, and I just appreciate you being here.
All right, have a nice night.
Thanks.